Hello and welcome back to She's in Focus, the podcast dedicated to inspiring and empowering female filmmakers and videographers from all walks of life and on every step of their creative journey. I'm your host, Kel Grant, an aspiring filmmaker from New Jersey who's just trying to turn my passion into something more and connect with amazing women who have the same passion for video. One of those being Alina Strausser, a 20-year-old self-employed filmmaker that's mainly working on documentaries at the moment. She's very concerned with the lack of female representation in the film world, and she's actively trying to fight gender roles, especially in the film industry, by expressing her true self and just looking for other female filmmakers to work with and create amazing things with. And Alina, you've come to the right place to have this discussion, so thank you so much for being here.
I'm so happy to be part of your podcast, so thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Well, the motto of this podcast is, female filmmakers from all walks of life and on every step of their creative journey. But now we have to add from anywhere in the world, because you are over there in Austria. So tell us what the film industry is like over there, because I know what it is in the US, but I'm very curious for you to paint that picture for us.
The film industry, I feel like it's not as dominant as in the US, of course, because it's in the middle of Europe, but still there are so many people who are working in film. But I just want to say that this industry is dominated by men, and it's crazy because especially where I live in the country, so there are even less women who work in film. So it's just crazy, and I had to, look for a very long time to even find other female filmmakers. It's a lot better in cities, but especially where I live, it's pretty bad. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine it. It must be hard to, even find others in the industry in general, if you're in the country, but especially female filmmakers. And like you were saying, we are in a male-dominated industry, so our representation really matters, and there has to be some sort of effort for us to all kind of band together and be more visible in the industry. But the only problem with that is it's up to us to do it. The men that I've seen aren't really, corralling for us. And I don't think that's to any fault of their own. A lot of the men that I've come in contact with, have been supportive of my dreams as a filmmaker. But I don't see that they're actively just trying to hire women or trying to bring women into this space. So it is kind of up to us.
I feel like we just constantly have to prove ourselves. And that's just something that makes it even harder for me, because I feel like we start at kind of different levels, because whenever you do something as a woman, people are always like, how are you going to do that? Like, where did you learn that? You aren't even as good as you say you are. So you always have to just prove yourself. And it's really exhausting and also sometimes humiliating, because I feel like a lot of men don't really trust women when it comes to filmmaking. So that's another barrier that is kind of in front of every woman that wants to work in film.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's what you said about it being exhausting is so true, because not only are you trying to learn all the technical skills, are you trying to, build your own videography business, then you have to keep in mind, not only do I have to show up for my clients, but everybody in the industry is, looking for me to justify my presence here. So you're right. Having to prove yourself, it's so it shouldn't be like that, because men don't have to prove themselves. They show up, they're confident, and even if they don't have the skills to follow through, they show up and they're there and they're not questioned at all.
Exactly. That's such a huge problem, I feel like. And I did a lot of research because I wanted to find out where this comes from. Where is the origin of this whole I want to say movement, or I don't know, but the thing is, I feel like this is just like deeply rooted in our society, has so much to do with patriarchy and everything, and how women were being viewed in history. And when I talk about this, I also want to talk about like internalized misogyny, because I feel like so many women they don't want to brag. They don't want to like be too confident, because this is just something that people, especially men, didn't like in women in history. So I feel like there is still some leftovers from those crazy patriarchal structures that we used to have. So I feel like everyone needs to work on that. Men and also women need to work on themselves and kind of be proud of who they are, and, you know, just express themselves freely, and, you know, just be themselves and be proud of what they've done and what they can accomplish.
Absolutely. And I think that it comes with a level of internal bias and being kind of self-aware about it too, right? So, you know, men and women have to kind of look introspectively and say, why is it that I question a woman in this space? Or why is it that I feel like I have to constantly prove myself? And you're right, it does, you know, lead back to these patriarchal structures that we still are kind of bound by those chains in a lot of ways in today's society. So it's about recognizing it not only in our society, but in ourselves, and then adjusting our behavior.
I feel like it's actually really hard to even, you know, realize that you've been kind of trapped in this whole thing, because I don't know, I feel like that's like one of the hardest things to, as you already said, to just realize why you're being that way, why you're acting that way. And the second thing is, you know, how can I change that? And this is like something that's really difficult, of course, but I feel like it's already such a huge step to simply realize and also like recognize everything that has happened to you, and just, you know, work on yourself. Yeah. It's a hard thing, but it's just something that has to be done, I feel like.
Yeah, in order for progress to be made, we have to kind of have those difficult conversations within ourselves and recognize things that may be uncomfortable to recognize. But if we're ignorant to it and we let things go on as they are, we're not going to make the progress that we need to see. Because we have made, you know, this is not to say that we haven't made incredible efforts and a lot of progress in the industry. You know, there are women are allowed in film school and you know, allowed to pursue their careers. You know, there are many women who have successful filmmaking careers, but there is kind of always this shadow looming over, or this cloud looming over of, you don't belong here. This is a man's space, a man's world. What are you going to do to prove that you need to be here? So you're right. It's an interesting topic, and something that we, you know, would love to address on this podcast, because it's the reason this podcast exists is for that, you know, because that structure is in place. You know, we have to actively go find other females in this space and actively try to amplify their voices in order to be heard. Whereas, men don't have to do that.
Yeah, like absolutely. I can agree with you 100%. And something that's also like really funny to me is because I've worked on a few sets, and they were usually dominated by men, of course. So, and one thing I started to realize is that usually when men are, you know, the director, the DP, and the producers, everything is really fast paced. Everything is kind of busy, really chaotic, I want to say. And last week I worked with another female filmmaker, and everything was a lot slower, logical, analytical. And that's just so interesting to me, because I feel like there are this feminine and also like this masculine energy when it comes to filmmaking. And it's just really interesting, because I don't want to say that either one of those is better, but like they have drawbacks and they also have really big advantages. And if we could, you know, combine those, we could get the best of both worlds.
Exactly. And there's not a lot of hybrid sets like that, because even the sets I've been on, I've seen, you know, like you were saying, men are taking those big important roles, right? The DP, the producer, the editor, things like that. But I've seen women fill the roles on set of, you know, their wardrobe, their makeup, their production assistants. But they're not like making the decisions on set. They're just helping execute a man's vision. Exactly. So I think that getting women in those positions of power, and like you were saying, just men and women are built differently. That's just a fact of life. You know, women think differently than men. I think it's just genetic, I think. So what a woman brings to set, like you were saying, is that analytical side, that logical side, but they can also, you know, relate to the emotions. I've seen a big difference in female directors versus male directors. You know, men, they just want to go in, they want to get things done. It's fast paced. Whereas a female director will be like, okay, let's take 5. How are you feeling about this? You know, let's really talk through this. And, you know, one is not necessarily worse than the other. You want both of them in any given situation. You might prefer a male director with those qualities or a female director with those qualities, but it is very interesting to note the differences on set.
Yeah, that's so true.
All right. So let's get into your journey a little bit.
Okay.
You were inspired by YouTube when you were young, when you were like 12 years old. So what videos would you watch and what interested you about them?
I think it didn't really matter to me what kind of videos. I watched makeup tutorials, I watched comedy videos. But the thing is, this was the first time where I came in contact with other female filmmakers. Because, you know, back then in 2012, YouTube wasn't as big as it is today. So YouTubers had to do everything themselves. They didn't have like an editor. They didn't have someone who wrote their script. So whenever I saw a woman filming herself, I kind of knew that she probably did everything herself. And that was really interesting and inspiring for me, because it was the first time that I was seeing another woman work in film. So that's just something that has really influenced me and also like given me so much motivation. And yeah,
and when something that really inspires me and motivates me is seeing someone who looks like me or you know, has the same characteristics do something that I thought maybe I could never do before. But now that you're seeing, you know, you were seeing these women on YouTube at a young age and you're like, well, if they can do it, I can do it too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that was the exact feeling I had, because I've never seen someone doing the same thing as me. So there was kind of like a mirror, or maybe like I want to say like a vision of what I am actually capable of. And I could see myself in those women. I could see myself like doing my own videos, like planning everything and doing everything myself. And it suddenly, it wasn't a dream anymore, but it was more like a possible reality.
Absolutely. Yeah. You were able to kind of see the roadmap of how to get there. Because sometimes we see, you know, we can see the vision, but we can't make the connection of like, okay, how do I get there? And YouTube is an interesting space for that, because not only do you see the final product, but YouTube has a lot of tutorials and things on it. So you can get the steps in order to how to get there. So you can, you know, YouTube how to film myself, how to set up audio, how to set up lighting, how to edit in Premiere Pro or anything like that. So at what point, you know, you saw these women on YouTube, you thought, oh, I can do that too. I see myself in them. What was your next step? Did you then kind of start going down the researching YouTube rabbit hole of figuring out how to work a camera and doing stuff like that?
Yeah, exactly. That was exactly what I did. I started watching tutorials everywhere. I mean, there weren't as many tutorials back then, but I just like typed in stuff like best editing software for beginners, beginner tutorials and stuff. And then I bought my first editing program, and I'm really happy. Like, I'm really happy right now. I'm so proud of myself with the choice I made, because I bought, like, it was a pretty shitty editing program, but it has kind of the same layout as Premiere. So I basically learned
that worked
Premiere
out.
kind of. Yeah, it worked. So, yeah, and at that time, I just started to realize that I just wanted to use my passion and my knowledge I already had in order to even, get more knowledge. And I also wanted to kind of use it actively. So I started talking about everything I did at school. And I have to say, I'm really thankful because I had so many supportive female teachers. And they were really happy with what I did and they were so proud. So we kind of integrated my video skills like in school and for school projects and everything. And this was just perfect for me because this was such an amazing opportunity for me in order to kind of, improve my skills and just, have some practice in like a safe environment where you're not punished when you make any mistakes, So that was an amazing thing, and I'm so happy that this happened to me, and I'm so thankful for the teachers that gave me this opportunity and that were like, oh my God, you're a girl and you're working in tech and you're interested in that. Let's just, give her more opportunities and support her, and that's something really amazing.
Yeah, it really makes all the difference, having mentors or supporters or teachers who believe in you. It really makes a difference. And building that foundation at such a young age, you were, high school and younger, or, experiencing that during very formative years of your life, that must have given you such confidence.
Yeah, sure. That has given me a lot of confidence, but also something that kind of came along with everything was a bit of jealousy, especially from like boys in my class. And that's something really interesting because they always kind of tried to degrade me or not. I don't know how to say it, but they weren't really happy about what I was doing. They were kind of jealous because I remember there was another boy and he wanted to do like a Minecraft YouTube channel or something, and his videos weren't really good and he didn't know what to do, and he was I don't know, he was pretty jealous. I could see that, but he was also, he didn't want to ask me for advice because that would have been embarrassing to him. But then one day, he told me that he really likes what I'm doing, and then he asked me for advice. And to this day, I still don't know, like, what was the thing that made him just, change his mind. It was so weird, but still, I experienced this a lot, like that men are just not really supportive when it comes to women being in tech in general. That's something I experienced at a really young age. Yeah.
And yeah, it's not that you wouldn't have been willing to help, other male students. So it's something inside them that is, that is built in that says she's a girl. She either, she shouldn't know what she's talking about, and I don't want to look weak by going to her for advice because I'm supposed to be intrinsically better than she is at everything for some reason. But yeah, that's the thing. I feel like if we start to band together with men, if they kind of knock down that ego that they have, you'll find that some of the best projects you'd probably ever create come from collaborating with men and women and bringing those two worlds and two brains together, and two creative minds, more importantly.
Exactly. That's basically what I'm also trying to do in the future, because of course I'm currently looking for other female filmmakers, but still I just want to bring everyone together to have the best outcome possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Yeah. So tell me, what have your efforts been to find other female filmmakers? Because when you were researching YouTube tutorials when you were younger, when you were learning, oh, what's the best editing software, things like that, I'm imagining that there weren't women making these videos, that there were men who actually made those videos. So what have your efforts been to find other female filmmakers?
Of course, like Instagram is a really big thing. But the thing is, I usually just find women that either live in cities, in big cities, or they simply are not a DP or director or, I don't know, editor. They're usually photographers, if I find creative women, or they just work like in the makeup department. So it's just been really hard. Of course, I've been searching all over Instagram, and I also joined some Facebook groups. But the thing is, I feel like where I'm located, there are really no women in film, and that's crazy.
Yeah, it certainly makes your efforts to find a community of female filmmakers a little bit harder. But I mean, thank God for technology, right? I mean, you and I, we live in, two different sides of the world, and we're able to connect and talk about these issues and support each other kind of virtually, and be part of the same community because of the technology that we have.
That's so true, and that's also like something I'm really looking forward to in the future, because there is no network of female filmmakers. So, and we already talked about that. If you want to make a change, you have to make the change. You have to be the change. So I was thinking about kind of, starting a big network of female filmmakers, especially in Europe, because, we have so many countries. And we are not connected, because I feel like there are female filmmakers, but they're far away and I do not have access to them, So that's just something I'm really working towards for the future, to kind of build this network on my own, because that's just so important to me, to have like-minded people that kind of go through the same problems and have the same questions. So yeah, that's just something I think would really help improve everything and all the issues we talked about.
Absolutely. And myself and the She's in Focus gang will definitely be on board with whatever efforts you're making. Because I think one of the best parts about doing this podcast is just realizing that if you really search for the women, they're out there. Yeah. We are in this industry. It's just a matter of finding them. And it's unfortunate that search is so hard. Because, I posted in the Full-Time Filmmaker Facebook group to get a whole bunch of women to be on the show. But had I not had that outlet, I would have been searching through the hashtags on Instagram or trying to find on Google or YouTube and find other women in this space. But it's been really amazing hearing their stories, because after every woman I talk to, I am even more inspired, and it kind of reaffirms and validates that, okay, I do deserve to be here. I'm not the only one. There are other women in this industry. They're struggling with the same things, and they're persevering too.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I 100% approve, and I'm so happy that you're doing this. I'm so happy to be part, because this is such an amazing opportunity for so many women in film to simply be heard, to simply, have a space where they can kind of show who they are. Because as we already said, in this male-dominated world, you sometimes do not have enough space to express yourself. So you kind of provide a platform for really creative people to just, be themselves and be happy and talk about what they love. So that's amazing.
Thank you so much. And I'm so excited to have you on the show. This has been such an enriching conversation already, because even though the podcast is about female filmmakers, I feel like this is the first episode where we're really diving into what it means to be a female in the industry and the issues that arise with that. So, I mean, thank you for bringing everything you're bringing to the table and, your efforts. I'm so excited to amplify this episode so that, our listeners in Europe can listen and say, oh, Alina, she's in Austria, but I'm going to go track her down because she cares about this as much as I do.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Oh, amazing. So tell me, when you were 18, you at this point had a foundation of some video skills. You were working with your teachers. You had a really a beautiful space to be able to express yourself creatively and grow as a young filmmaker in a very supportive environment, even though some of your male peers were disapproving, were discouraging, were jealous, but you did still have that foundation. And I'm sure that even though the boys that were kind of putting you down, even though I'm sure that was very hard for you, I'm imagining that the support that you had from your teachers weighed more than the negativity, and that helped you a lot. So when you were 18, you entered a video contest. Tell me about that.
So this is a pretty fun story because, I was 18 or 17. I think I was 17 actually. And I saw on Facebook that there was this kind of contest, not really, but you just had to choose any woman in tech. So I was like, I'm just gonna participate. I don't know, maybe I'll win something. And like I had to, have the film done the next day. So I was just really busy, and I was so stressed because like I only read it the day before, but I was like, I have to join because this is exactly like what I'm standing for, So what I did is I chose Sally Mankey. She actually worked with Quentin Tarantino on Pulp Fiction. So that's just something that inspired me so much because during my research, it was already so hard to find find a woman that is working in film and that's like really, really popular and that I could choose. But then I found her and I was so happy. So I decided to make this short film about her and about everything that inspires me about her. And then, I actually won this thing, which I was really surprised about because I did the video in like 2 hours and it wasn't a really good video. I'm not proud of it anymore. But still, the things I said seemed to, kind of really evoke certain emotions, because I was talking about the exact same issues and problems we have and how we can solve them. So I feel like the content of the video was what really made me win this thing because they were so, they really liked what I was talking about because they knew that those problems were a real thing and that we had to address them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just kind of goes back to the idea that if you have a great story, even if your technical abilities aren't where you want them to be, the story will definitely prevail. And it sounds like that's what happened in this video. I've actually never heard of her. I had no idea, that she'd worked on some Quentin Tarantino movies. That's really awesome. And that's the thing. So you had to do your own research to find this woman. Were there any efforts by your teachers to kind of introduce you to women in the film space, or were you kind of left to have to discover them for yourself?
So this contest was actually not connected to school at all. So this was just something I did privately. So, but still, I have had classes in school like that focused on photography and filmmaking. And yeah, it's actually crazy because there wasn't a lot of female representation in there. So yeah. As you said that, I realized that actually there is also a lack of female representation, especially in education. Yeah.
Yeah, and it all feeds into this cycle, and it's like no wonder why we are always seeking this kind of validation and trying to find other women in the space because they're not presented to us, they're not put in front of us. We have to go out and seek them ourselves. So it's wonderful that you won this contest. Tell me what this did for you. How did this open up doors? How did you feel when you won? How did it improve your confidence? Tell me about how you were feeling after you won.
Of course, it did really improve my confidence and self-worth, because this was like the first time I had this kind of, I want to say, approval, you know, because I never knew if my work was good or bad, or because I had no comparison. And this was really the first time where I started to realize maybe what I'm doing is not that bad. So I should be proud of myself and what I'm doing. So yeah, this definitely was like a big milestone for me. Like my first time just, you know, really believing in me and my skills.
Yeah, and of course, having the recognition of, it's one thing for you to say, you know, I'm proud of this work, but hearing someone else validate that and say, you're right, this is good. Like this really impacted me in a way, it's so validating. And I find that even now, you know, thinking back at my high school experience, you know, I've always been into video. I was always in like the television or radio programs at my high school and in college. And that external validation has always been something that's motivated me, because, you know, especially in the creative world, your work is always on display to be judged and to be criticized. And when somebody, you know, sees your work and instead of tearing it apart has either something constructive to say or is praising it, it goes a long way in how we think about ourselves and the work that we're producing.
Exactly. I also feel like this because, as we already talked about this topic of women not wanting to, you know, really be proud of themselves or not wanting to brag or anything, I feel like this has to do a lot with that. So recently I did a documentary, like the one that I actually sent you. And then a local museum here, they wanted to include this documentary in an exhibition. So I was, of course, really happy. But one of my first thoughts was that I'm just really scared how people are gonna react to my documentary, you know? Like, what are the responses gonna be? Like, will people criticize me a lot? Will people try to bring me down? Because I've already experienced something like that. And then last week we were there, and there was another man, like about my age, maybe a bit older, and he also works in the creative industry, and he just told me how amazing he finds my documentary. And he wouldn't stop talking about how he loved my shots and the composition and everything, and the color grading and the drone shots and everything in storytelling. And I was so happy and proud of myself because, you know, there has been this fear like stored in my body all the time, and I was like, someone's gonna come and be like, oh my god, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. But then there was this man, and he was like, that's amazing. And suddenly, like, all the blockages, everything was gone. And this is just something that really boosts your confidence. As you already said, it's just amazing. And this external validation is something I don't want to rely on completely, because I want to be proud of the things that I made. But especially when you don't have any comparison and you're in a male-dominated working field, it's amazing to hear. And it really makes you happy. It gives you this approval of actually doing great things, you know? And it really motivated me, you know?
Absolutely. And I can echo what that man was saying, because I watched the documentary and it was so well done.
Thank you so
really,
much.
Really amazing job.
Thank you.
And it, you know, it was a good documentary when I don't speak, you know, but I only speak English. They were speaking German, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were speaking German, and I couldn't understand a word, but I still followed the story, and I could still appreciate the art. So that's when you know you've made a good film, when the language barrier isn't a barrier. So that's amazing. I'd like to say one thing about external validation, though, that you were right. It gives us such a push, but conversely, we have to be careful, because if we rely that much on external validation, when we get the other end of it, when people are disapproving, when people are mean, when people are criticizing, that can really tear us down. You know, I've never really had anyone outwardly kind of come for my work, but I remember going to doing like one of my first shoots for someone outside of like my family or my friends. I did it for this small thrifting boutique that an old friend from high school is doing, and I went and I filmed at a flea market. And this was my first video. I had just gotten the camera, so I was experimenting with slow-mo and, you know, 60 frames per second, 120 frames per second. And I put together something that I thought was good. And at first that person was like, this is so amazing. This is so great. But then they never used that video on any of their social media platforms. They never kind of use it. So it's like you can only put so much weight on what people are saying. And I've noticed that people will praise your work, but you have to, in some ways, it's really appreciated if you take it a step further. You know, you can tell me it's great, but are you telling your friends? Are you sharing it with your network? Are you helping amplify my voice and my work? Because as women in this industry, we do need that extra push. You know, those nice words, they can help our ego personally. But in order for us to really survive and thrive in this industry, we do rely on word of mouth and getting our work out there. Because, you know, there's something about men's work, men's videos and film work. You can find it anywhere on the internet, but to find a woman's work, you really have to dig. So I find that I appreciate the external validation, but I don't put so much weight on it because of, you know, of those reasons that I mentioned. So it's a very interesting dynamic that we have to be mindful of.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I 100% can approve of everything you've said, because for me it was just like I just needed this little push, because, you know, I've never really received criticism from anyone that does work in the creative industry. So like, people of course talk to me about my films and everything, but they were, you know, teachers, friends. And this was the first time someone complimented me that actually, you know, knows what I'm doing, knows what things should look like. So I feel like this was just, you know, some kind of thing I needed in order to be able to also feel fulfilled and to kind of, you know, work on my self-worth. And I know that I don't want to you know, depend on external validation all the time, because as you said, it can be really dangerous, especially when you take things too personally with criticism and stuff. But yeah, I just want to say that I feel like a lot of women also like come from a really bad place when it comes to, you know, criticism from other people, because I feel like so many women kind of start in this industry with this mindset of not being enough, you know. They just they step foot in the industry and all they hear is that they're not gonna make it. So what I'm wishing for is just a bit of encouragement, and not only by women, also by men, so that they just have, you know, a better start in the industry and just, you know, not be discouraged like at the very beginning, you know.
Yeah, I love that you said that. This woman I had on the podcast before, she was saying that she was reading some research or an article that women only need about 3 little pushes of motivation before they really start to believe in themselves. And, you know, when you were younger, I feel like, tell me if I'm wrong, but maybe the first push was like seeing those women on YouTube. YouTube. The second push might have been your female teachers really pouring into you and helping invest in your future. And then the third push was that, you know, putting yourself out there with this video and that external validation from that, you know, someone in that creative world, a man in that creative world. And like, those little pushes, while they may have been small, really helped propel you really helped propel you in the right direction and feeling better about yourself. And I think that the concept of these little pushes of motivation is so true, because I mean, I've just experienced that in my life. Anytime somebody compliments my work who's in the industry, it does give me like a bit of motivation, because you're right, they do know what they're talking about. It's not me sending it to my mom and her saying this is so great because she loves everything I do. It's, someone who knows when a color grade is off, who can tell when your shutter speed is set wrong, who really understands storytelling and how to draw emotion. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting, and it reminded me when you explained that.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Like, I also feel like, yeah, it was a confidence boost, and it's just something that kind of needs to happen in order for me to, find myself and also be proud of who I am. So I feel like there's definitely a lot of truth to that theory. So yeah.
Absolutely. So I want to get back into your journey a little bit. So after that contest, I believe that you were approached by a director due to the film that you made for that contest. Tell me about that opportunity and how that kind of guided your filmmaking journey.
So, like, after I graduated, I didn't really know what to do. And the thing is, the film industry is always being seen as something that's not really secure, because when you're working in film, it's always like, how are you gonna make like a stable income? Everything is so, unsafe, unsure. Like, so I really had those doubts. And at first, I wanted to study biology. Yeah, so it was a crazy journey for me, because the thing that actually happened was, after I graduated, I decided to do a gap year because I didn't really know what to do. So yeah, I wanted to be an au pair in Iceland. So I found a family and everything, and I wanted to, go there in March 2020. And we all know what happened in March 2020. COVID started. So I couldn't go to Iceland. And, I was there like, I didn't know what to do. Like, I had endless opportunities, and I started to realize that I knew nothing about me and nothing about what I wanted to do. It was kind of like this bubble around me popped, and I didn't know what I wanted in life. And then at this exact time, I received a call he's actually the owner of an Austrian institution that kind of preserves old film footage and stuff, like for future generations. So it's like a really big thing in Austria. And like the owner of that institution called me and told me about the project he's doing, because he started a project with documentaries. So it's basically documentaries about all the traditions and everything in my area. And he told me about the project, and he asked me to be part of that. And I was shocked. I was confused. I couldn't really believe that this man called me and asked me to work for him. And then he told me that he simply, he was Googling, and he tried to look for filmmakers, like especially where I live, because that's where the project is taking place. So he wanted to have, local filmmakers and support them. So yeah, I was shocked. I didn't know what to say. I was so confused, but I simply said yes, because at that moment it simply felt right, because this is what kind of brought me back like on the right track on my creative journey. And I'm so thankful for that, because as I already said, this happened at a point where I didn't really know where I was going. I almost started studying something I wasn't even actually passionate about. So this thing really kind of, put me back in place, I want to say. And I'm so thankful and grateful for that, because without that call, I wouldn't have been able to do everything I do now. I mean, I'm recording a podcast about female filmmaking with you, and I have my own filmmaking company, and it's crazy, and it's just because of this call. So I'm really grateful, and I'm so happy that I'm like on this path right now.
Well, me too. Hearing your story is inspiring in and of itself. I mean, it sounds like what's been consistent though is your passion for video. You've just kind of needed those little pushes and the right opportunity to come along. I'm very curious, what makes video and filmmaking such a passion of yours? What do you love about it?
I think it's mainly the thing that you can have such a great impact on people. You can provoke certain emotions, and you can also like get people to act. Like, do you know that feeling when you were in the movies and then you get out of the film and then you're like so inspired, you feel like a superhero, you can basically do anything. And
Yes.
that's just something I love. I absolutely love. And like my biggest goal is to kind of, evoke this feeling in people with my films. So yeah, and you can just, as I said, have such an amazing impact on people. And also, like, when you do films about really important issues, you can just do so many things. You can reach so many people, and you can influence so many people in a very positive way. So that's just something I really love about filmmaking, especially about documentaries, because they even tell a real story, and they try to open your eyes and kind of expose you to new worlds, new issues that you probably weren't even aware of before you watched that film. So yeah, that's what I love about filmmaking. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I think that documentary filmmaking is something that really interests me. It also intimidates me, but it's really interesting. And seeing again, watching the documentary that you sent over, it really kind of reinforced this idea that a documentary holds so much power. It's not only just visually, stimulating with beautiful imagery, but it really is the story that drives it. So I'd love to hear about your experience working on Cliffhanger, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
that the name of it?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's
Yeah, I'd
actually
love to hear about
been,
your
yeah,
experience there.
yeah. So it's actually been a pretty tough journey, I want to say, because
Ah,
documentaries are not something that are very easy to make. Because what I'm doing all the time when I'm filming a documentary is problem solving. I'm just improvising all the time because you don't have a script, you don't really know what's going on. You're simply there, and then things
mm,
happen, and you gotta work with what you got. And sometimes it's really easy, sometimes it's pretty hard. So I don't have a lot of time to, set up lights and everything, because everything is happening like right now, and I have to just get my camera and film
right.
everything and be fast and everything. Yeah, so sometimes it really works out like in a really beautiful way, but sometimes there are a lot of problems, and you just have to, try to get the best outcome possible to, get something that's kind of aesthetic but still um, you know, has a good story.
Yeah, I never thought about it as problem solving. I love that analogy, and you're absolutely right. It does it does require kind of this ongoing, your brain is constantly going. You're kind of trying to anticipate what's going to happen, and you kind of have to try to be one step ahead of everything as you're filming. So what were some of the challenges that you experienced when filming this documentary? Because you were the DP, were you
Mm-hmm.
also the editor on that one?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was also the editor, so I basically was the DP, director and editor. It was really
Wow.
difficult because like the whole process was so chaotic, and yeah, I just had to improvise so much in this project, especially like with the montage of the sign, where they put it like next to the waterfall. This was so chaotic because I had to, like climb up mountains and everything to, get those beautiful close-up shots. And it was not only mentally but also physically exhausting. Like, I mean, it was
Right,
an
right.
amazing shooting day. I loved everything about it, but still, I I don't really know how to say it, but it was exhausting. It was exhausting, but also really, really beautiful. But it was definitely a challenge, kind of like being very physically active and then still having like the mental capacity to kind of form a story in your head and think about the edit and everything. So yeah, that was just really chaotic, but it was an amazing experience that really also formed me and motivated me even more, because after that I realized what I had achieved in that day. So that was amazing.
Yeah, what did you say, if you could, pick one thing that you learned from this experience filming the documentary, what would it be? How did you grow as a filmmaker through this documentary?
That's a really hard question, but basically, I want to say that you simply have to have self-confidence and believe in yourself, because otherwise it won't work. Because if I would go there and be like, oh my God, that's too much for me, I need someone else, I need other people, if I can't do this by myself because I'm not capable of doing this, then I'm kind of feeding my ego even more, because it always tells me that you can't do the things that you want to do, or maybe it's just, the voices of men, like, you're not able to do this, you can't do this. So yeah. I know that I don't want to be like overworked, or that I can get help if I need help, but the thing is, I just want to try to do it, because if I don't try it, I will never know if I could have done it by myself. So it's mostly like going out of your comfort zone. That's basically what I've learned, to, try everything, try all my ideas I had, and simply try to, create beautiful imagery despite all those really big problems. And yeah, I'm so happy that I really, didn't give up and really believed in myself, because now my self-confidence is even better, and I can proudly say that I did this by myself,
Yeah. I mean, I'm so glad that you did, because the audience, they might just see the 14-minute final product, but they don't see the days of and hours of shooting that went into it, all of the challenges that you faced, and they don't even see, the really rewarding moments that you personally experienced, but still there's so much conveyed in the final picture. And I just, I really commend you. I didn't realize that you did basically everything by yourself. I couldn't imagine. I mean, the shots were perfect. The interviews were composed so well.
Thank you so
just
much.
Like the shots, and I can't imagine, having to keep all of that information kind of up in your brain while climbing up a mountain, or while keeping yourself on schedule and moving. Because one thing about documentary filmmaking that I think the thing I find most intimidating is you typically have one shot to do it. If you missed the shot of them putting up the red tourist information sign, that's it.
Yeah, exactly. That this is something that's also been really intimidating for me. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's almost like a wedding film, I want to say, because if you miss something that's happening, it's gone. It's gone forever, and it won't happen the same way again. So yeah, that's one of the main reasons why I think doing documentaries is super hard, because I've so many times I was like, I should have done that shot, I should have filmed this, I should have filmed that, and you can always make a better documentary, but it's also accepting what you have, and just making the best out of everything that you got. So it's also like a journey of accepting yourself and accepting your work and what you've done. Yeah. But yeah, it's beautiful, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, and you've brought so much value to this podcast, and hearing you talk about your experience and of course about your passion for female filmmakers in the industry has certainly been inspiring. I'm curious to know, do you plan to stick with documentary filmmaking? Like, if you could work on one project, what's your kind of dream goal project to work on?
I feel like I have so many ideas and projects that I want to work on. But the thing is, I would love to, work more on, topics and issues that I'm really interested about, because now I'm doing documentaries, and yeah, I usually just, focus on things that someone else brings me. So I just would love to, create something myself and, write a script and do just something like that really comes from myself, because I feel like this is also something that just increases your passion for a project, because it's your idea, it's your vision and everything. So I'd love to do something like that. I don't know in what form, maybe a documentary, maybe a short film, because I would love to do a short film in the future. But still, something that's also really important to me is to simply express myself creatively, like to kind of use my full potential. So I don't want to stick with documentaries like for the rest of my life. I just want to try out different, types of films, and I just, I want to try different things and try to find what works best for me. And that's just something I really love about the film industry, that you can basically do anything. And yeah, that's just something that also really motivates me and that I'm really looking forward in the future.
Yeah, the ability to expand your creative horizons, and the limit is kind of up to you. I think that's the great thing about the film industry as well. You can kind of go as far as your mind will take you. So that's something I love about the field that we're in too. So do you have any exciting projects you want to plug coming up? You can tell us about where we can find Cliffhanger or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. So actually, the documentary series I'm doing right now is actually going to continue for another year. And there is a website. Maybe you can insert the link. I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, so basically, like, you are going to find my films like on this website probably next year. So you can see my work there. And another thing I'm working on right now is I'm actually trying to write a short film myself. So I'm actually working on the script right now. And I think you can just follow me on Instagram if you want to kind of see my journey, because I'll post everything, the whole process and everything. So yeah.
Awesome. So we know where to find you and what to look out for. What is one thing about your story or your journey that you want our listeners to remember?
In order to get change,
like one takeaway, if you had one.
I just want to say, for myself personally and for other women, I feel like I have this kind of responsibility or even obligation to kind of pave the way for female filmmakers for the future, So that's just something I also want to encourage other people to do, to just stand up for themselves and be the change they want to see in the world, because like we're all together in this, big chaos of the film industry. So if we want to have more female representation, we just have to be the female representation. And it's just something that's really important to me in order to also, give future generations better chances and a better starting point. Yeah.
Absolutely. The change starts with us. And I think that, you're making amazing efforts, and, you're continuing to inspire the mission of this podcast. So I hope that we absolutely stay in touch and that our journeys continue to parallel.
Me too, yeah.
So my last question for you is, how can the viewers and listeners of this podcast support you as a filmmaker?
So as I already said, basically following me on Instagram, because everything I do is being posted there. So yeah, this would be the most amazing support I can imagine. And maybe you can follow my projects, or maybe you can even be part of one of my projects if you're a filmmaker yourself.
Amazing. And I think this thought just came to me. We're going to have to team up one day and make a documentary just for female filmmakers about the journey, all the research. We've got to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much for your time, Alina.
Thank you so much for having me. It was amazing. Thank you.
Of course. So as usual, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next episode. Bye.